Rodriguez loves found footage. He loves it. I've reviewed a few of his movies and they have all been found footage. This is the latest one. This one is called The Owl Witch. And suspiciously it was actually released on YouTube by the looks of it. Which, you know, it's a little bit strange. Normally I would get like a screener or something and it would go to a streaming service or something. So, The Owl Witch, what's it all about? Well, it focuses on this woman who has lost her son. And she is trying to find him, and in doing so, she does like a kind of a DNA test to try and find any kind of lost relatives. And she does find this woman who is like a kind of second cousin or something. So she goes there, and this cousin informs this woman that there is this kind of family curse that involves this witch known as the Owl Witch, who is hunting kind of people of a certain lineage who obviously burnt her at the stake some years ago. And now we have these two women being hounded by this entity, this Owl Witch. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let us discuss. So I've mentioned I've reviewed a lot of Isaac Rodriguez films. And they have been a mixed bunch. Some I have actually quite liked. Some have been less good, shall we say. So this one does have some segments, some sequences that are done quite well. You take them in the vacuum, you look at this sequence, you think that's a well put together sequence, which is kind of, has some scary moments, or it is somewhat of effective in a kind of a spooky sense or an eerie sense. And I think this movie has these sequences kind of spotted around. So there is a few sequences here. Yeah, when you watch that sequence, I think that's quite a well done sequence. It's pretty scary. It had a good amount of atmosphere and a jump scare or what have you. Second thing I would say is I think the acting is solid. Now the movie is relatively not loads of dialogue really, we largely have just two actresses on screen. And although I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, the acting's fabulous, because there's not a hell of a lot of, as I say, interaction on screen. I think the actors do a good enough job on screen to, to make you believe in their characters at the very least. So that was interesting. And I do think the idea here about having, family members that have never really met and they're kind of somewhat distant, and you're having that kind of relationship between these two people kind of just build from scratch really. It's an interesting one, and obviously one kind of knows more about this curse than the other, for example. So I think they had an interesting idea. Okay, but let me just say what doesn't work. I do think this is one of the weaker films from Rodriguez, which is why I suspect maybe it was premiered straight on YouTube. So let's break down why I say that. The main problem for me, I think, is the story is not particularly well told. I think this story is quite impenetrable and it feels like half a story. We have a kind of somewhat of a framing device. We almost have two. In actual fact, we have two framing devices. When you first watch the movie, you have a scene, and then you have another scene about other people, and then the story starts in earnest. And it just like, were these scenes meant to be put in to try and make more sense of the story? Because the story really doesn't feel like it's particularly well developed. Why our main character is like, I don't see why searching for the son would lead her to kind of try and find these distant relatives. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no scenes where she's trying to talk to the police, things like that. It's like, it just seems like an excuse, to be honest. And then we go there. We go to meet these this woman who's the cousin and stuff. It just never really feels like these people have never met and things like that. And then you're kind of she just tells about this kind of curse, and it's just like, oh, okay. The story just isn't particularly strong, and I think it seems half-baked to me. and sometimes even somewhat incomprehensible, I must say. So I think the story is weak. The acting isn't so bad, but I do feel the characterization as well is also very weak. We really don't get any sort of background about these people, and this sometimes is one of the kind of the downsides of having a found footage, because you're, you know, why would you, it's difficult to build characters when you've kind of you're just watching this footage that was found and stuff. But there are ways, and it has been done before. This one doesn't do that, so you've kind of got blank slates in regards to the kind of the characters here, and you know, and I think some people may put this down to the acting. I don't think it's the acting. I think it's the lack of character development within the film that really kind of makes these people on screen really have no urgency, and you don't know anything about them. So yeah, that was a problem. Now, when you're looking at the concepts of found footage, it presents opportunities of having a low budget movie and kind of cutting corners to a degree, but also it presents its own unique problems. And sometimes found footage maybe falls into these problems, and this is one of them. There are sequences here where our main character is kind of having visions and things like this, or dreams, but somehow that's captured on footage. And so, well, how is this being captured? It doesn't make sense. How would that be sort of captured on a found footage if it's something that is internalized, if that makes sense? Or if it's like a hallucination or something. And it just doesn't make any sense. There's some edits here that don't make sense in the found footage aspect. So I think this movie is one of these examples where the conceit of found footage doesn't really work. Now, Rodriguez, the writer-director, has given us some good found footage movies that have worked well, but this one doesn't. This was a not good example of it. There's also the obvious things where it's the typical found footage movie where, you know, it's kind of just blurry like images and running around and you're not really seeing stuff. It's that typical kind of like found footage reasons for why people are filming particular scenes. This movie, unfortunately, I mean, there's no real reason why she's filming all this. Even the cousin asks, "Why are you filming?" "Oh, I'm making a documentary." I'm like, "Are you? Are you really?" No, you're not. So yeah, it's kind of like, this movie unfortunately is one of the weaker examples of found footage, even from the writer-director's own library of work. So I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 10. I suspect there's a reason why this was put on YouTube for free, really, rather than a normal sort of distribution model. So yeah, it's not one of the better examples of found footage. 3 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.